Hell yeah, dude. We're back. Joe's got a new hat. I'm a little sick, but that's all right. We're gonna do the thing in week 3. How you guys doing? Oh, Joe, how you feel, man?
Feel great. Got messages out this morning, so I'm ready to roll.
There you go, man. And let me see that scar. Show me. Give the girls a wink. Hey, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so guys, if you thought week 1 was bad in any sort of way, week 2 was absolute chaos. Like week 1 was a little bad, week 2 was carnage. But like we kind of talked about before we went into last week, there were some games that we targeted, Joe. They worked out pretty well. And this is kind of the method that we go through when we're playing in both our season-long leagues and our DFS stuff. When we're not just looking at matchups, but they do play a big part into how we make our decisions. And so that played a big part for us. And we were able, Joe, we had a couple of lineups that had people hurt in them where we literally got bagels out of some hurt people, and we still wound up cashing in almost all the games that we played, and we were up when I would say that we had a pretty bad week, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, we had what I would call an awful week, and we made money, which is pretty great. And the main person we had that got hurt was Jordy Nelson, right? Like totally unforeseeable, basically like first or second route of the game, like tweaked his quad and was out for the game. And so we actually won money with every team that we had, all 2 or 3 teams we had with Jordy Nelson. I think we won money on almost all of them.
Yeah, and just right off the cuff too. One of the first things that we're going to wind up talking about is what we were wrong about. Because once again, we want to drive this home. We want to talk about when we want to be accountable for things, right? Like we want to talk about when we're wrong about things specifically so that we can learn from them. We can tell you why we made our decision, and then you can see why it went wrong, if it was the right decision, if it was the wrong decision. Because sometimes you make a wrong decision, it doesn't work out, and it's still the right decision no matter what. 10 out of 10, you go back and make the same thing over again. But sometimes it's all, plenty of times it's also just wrong. And that's okay. We want to be held accountable for that. But we're also going to talk about a few things that we were right about, and then we're going to go into waiver pickups. We're going to talk about some DFS this week. What we want to talk about is what guys we're paying up for, what guys we think are really good value plays, and what guys we think are punts or major grabs out of the bargain bin. Then we'll go over a couple of games that we're looking to target this week in DFS, and then we're going to get up out of here. We're going to call it a short stream this week. I need to get back to getting some rest, but. One of the things that we were wrong about that was a huge factor in our games this week was Zeke, Joe. And we had Zeke.
Yeah.
This isn't common that we do this, but we had Zeke in, I don't know, I think every lineup this week. Did
all
we
but
have
one,
any?
maybe. It's
Yeah.
about 90% of them.
Yeah. Sorry. We had Zeke almost everywhere this week, and we still wound up cashing money. And I don't know if any of you guys paid attention to football this weekend, but Zeke was trash. Like it wasn't that Zeke himself was trash. Like he was partly responsible for the whole thing. But Joe, you watched this game too, and like the Broncos baited the Cowboys into doing something, which is throwing the ball. And they fell for it, like completely. They 100% fell for it. Like the Broncos can be run on. Even when you're behind on the Broncos, you should run the ball because if you throw it, it plays into their strategy. Like they're a good team.
Just hurry up and run the ball.
Yeah, they're a really good team when playing from ahead. They want to make your quarterback have to throw in desperation. And Dak Prescott is not a guy who's going to lead you in some triumphant comeback. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not Drew Brees. He's not Tom Brady. Like he's not going to do those things. So they should have kept running the ball. They fell for the bait and they started chucking it all around. And as a result, even though Zeke played, I think 50 plus of their 71 snaps, he got like 4 points or less than 4 points. He got some crap number, and it was like we literally got a bagel from the player that we paid up for one of the most in every single lineup last week. Like, what do you think about the game, and how do you think the game flow went?
Well, the game flow was actually okay, right? It didn't really get out of hand as far as being a bad score until like maybe early third quarter or something. And by halftime, Zeke should have had, he finished with 9 carries, 8 yards on 9 carries. By halftime, he should have had more than 9 carries.
Yeah.
Like when you play the Broncos, you don't throw the ball, you run the ball. That's what you do. It's the only way to compete with them. You're not going to beat them consistently by throwing it on them. So you beat them by running the ball. Even if you get behind early, you're down a touchdown or a field goal or 10 points or whatever, you can still run the ball on them, and that's what you should do. And for some reason, I don't know why, the Cowboys just decided to come out throwing, and Zeke ended the game with nine carries. Doesn't make any sense. Don't expect it to continue. They're going to have learned their lesson because they got blown out, and Dak was terrible. And they're going to run the ball, and they're going to go back to protecting Dak, which is what what they're good at. So I'm not sure why they decided to do it in this game against the hardest team to pass against in the league, but they did, and I don't expect that to continue. But it did cost us a lot, and we were obviously wrong about that, and so we're sorry about that. We think we did it for the right reasons, in that teams have shown that they can't pass and can run against the Broncos, and for some reason the Cowboys just didn't see it that way.
Right, like to give you guys a really quick last point, and then I'm gonna let Joe take us to the next part. But like, I'm not straying away from playing the Bills running backs this week, right? Like, I'm not all of a sudden scared of the Broncos run defense. Like, I think you can still exploit them. I think that's the way that people have to play them if they want to try and win against the Broncos. It's that simple.
Yeah. So sorry about that. You can still play running backs against the Broncos, and of course, still play Zeke again if
absolutely
feel like it. Another one that we were wrong about was the Cooper Crabtree call. So we called that it was going to be a Cooper week, thinking that last week was a Crabtree week, or last week was like kind of both a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, they had enough targets to go around. It should have been more of a Cooper week, but this last week I called as a Cooper week again. It's obvious. I mean, the Jets don't have anybody worth their salt to cover the top receiver. The thing that we're falling into a bit here is that Carr likes Crabtree a lot, and that's fine. I mean, he likes Cooper too. They both get a healthy amount of targets, and they're both really good target-wise. But usually when they have somebody who is going to be shadowed, the number one guy is going to be shadowed. It's usually a Crabtree week, and if they don't have a really good number one receiver, Cooper's a good enough route runner that he can pretty much exploit people in space, especially if they play off man like Marcus Peters did twice last year, and he carved him up. Usually those are Cooper weeks, so you kind of have to look at the wide receiver matchup, against the CB, and that's typically what we try and do for you, so that we can just tell you. But every now and then it goes awry, and they had it was a huge Crabtree week, so sorry for the bad call on that one.
Yeah, and Crabby ended up getting 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Was it? Carr loves him in the red zone, so Cooper's not going to have huge touchdown weeks.
No,
he's not ever going to have a 3 touchdown week. He's just not that big of a red zone target. He doesn't catch the ball that well when it's contested, to be quite honest. But this week, they're playing the Redskins. Redskins have Josh Norman, really, really good cornerback. Their other cornerback, Rashad Breeland, is not very good.
A really, really bad cornerback.
And so we're thinking it's going to be a Crabtree week. And apparently, so do the DFS people. Crabtree is more expensive than Cooper
For real.
But so yeah, sorry we're wrong about that. We're shooting again. We're calling Crabtree this week. It has nothing to do with the fact that he scored 3 touchdowns last week, and everything to do with the fact that we think Norman's going to be shadowing Cooper, and Norman's pretty good. 2 more that we were wrong about. One was Brandon Cooks. We thought that he'd run right by the Saints defense. Somehow between Monday and Sunday, the Saints wisened up and put Marshawn Lattimore on the other team's best receiver instead of on their worst receiver, and he shut down Cooks. So we're not saying Marshawn Lattimore is a young Darrelle Revis or anything like that, but he did a good job on Cooks, and so we didn't expect that. We were wrong about that one. Cooks did get tackled at the 1-yard line, by the way.
Yeah, I'll also say this. Now Lattimore's really hurt, but Lattimore is Cooks is the exact kind of receiver that Lattimore can really shake up to, because Cooks doesn't like contested balls. He beats people with speed. Lattimore is really good at staying in the hip pocket, and if he can just get a hand in there, contest anything that's successful for him, and that's the kind of stuff that Cooks doesn't catch. He may be less successful in the future against people that are really good at bodying him away, who can make contested catches no matter what. So this was just a better game plan, and it's hey, what do you know, putting you said, putting the best cornerback on somebody who's not the worst receiver is probably a good idea. So it happens. I still thought, even if Lattimore was covering him, I thought he was going to beat us deep. So, it happens. I think that he, I think it was just a bit of an anomaly, and they obviously got beat really bad by Gronk, and then James White obviously ate up a ton of yards. So.
It really came down to they didn't even need to go deep because people were so open short with James White, and I mean Gronk wasn't even deep on his deep touchdown. He was 10 yards down the field and just no one within 30 yards of him. Yeah. So the Saints defense was so bad they didn't even need to throw it long. So the last one that we would say that fantasy wise we were wrong on was the Bears defense. They were super cheap. We thought that Jameis might have a bad week coming off of these buys. Plus Jameis is prone to bad weeks in general. He's very interception prone. He looked like that in the preseason. He looked like that in the Bears game. So I will defend us a little bit here. So first of all, let's be clear. We were wrong. The Bears got basically, I think they got 0 points in DraftKings. So in that sense, we were wrong. But they were totally crippled by their offense. So Tampa had 3 touchdowns. One of them was a 10-yard drive after a Tariq Cohen fumble on a punt return. So he fumbled it. The next play, they threw a 10-yard touchdown to Mike Evans. That was it. So that's not, I mean, the defense could have stopped it, I guess, but that's not really on the defense, 10-yard drive. The next touchdown was a 45-yard drive after a Mike Glennon fumble. And the other touchdown was a pick 6. So defense gave up 2 touchdowns and only 2 or 3 field goals. And this is with 5 turnovers by the offense. The defense actually did a pretty good job. They did drop 2 interceptions, which is a little bit frustrating. One of them would have prevented a field goal. So that was a little bit, frustrating from our end. But, we think that Jameis is still a person you can bet against. He's still turnover prone. And we think that the Bears defense aren't as bad as they're being priced in these fantasy leagues. But you do have to take into account that they might be crippled by their offense as they were this weekend.
Yeah, I think taking everything into account, the Bears actually played pretty well. Like you can't get 2 interceptions thrown right to you and not execute. Like that's unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. But this is another one where you can't look at the box score. You have to watch games or listen to people that do watch games, because this was it's not, the Bears defense just didn't get crushed for 27 points. It wasn't how the game flow went. And so you need to be aware of that. Now, do I recommend playing them every week? No, that's not what we're trying to say. We're not trying to say that the Bears is like a top 5 defense or something, but like there will be very usable weeks, and they're not as bad as people are making them out to be. Like even to the point where if they're playing somebody who is turnover prone and just doesn't have a lot of weapons, like I would even call them a fill-in for your season-long league. Like you could fill them in for your season-long league if it was an appropriate week and you really needed them and they fit. So
yeah, if they're playing the Vikings without Sam Bradford, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which they may do this year, and you can fire them up.
Yeah.
So those are the main ones. We may have been wrong about some other things. Those are the big ones we were wrong about that we bet on and personally hurt us. Yeah. These calls did. That being said, we still came out in the green or in the black because of these other things that we got right. So we got enough things right, even though we had this is kind of a bad week for us. We had a lot of big things go wrong.
This was a horrible week for it. Like it almost so this is what we're trying to show you guys. Like, over the long term, this is what will make you profitable, right? Like this is, if you play cash games, build your bankroll, you do the right things, you play the optimal thing all the time, like things are still going to go wrong. We're not soothsayers. We can't see the future. If we were, we'd be millionaires, like way millionaires by now. So what we're trying to do is show you the optimal thing to do over a long period of time. And when you do that, even when you lose, you still like sort of win. Like this was this is about as bad of a week as it'll ever get for us, unless like just everyone gets hurt. And in that case, that's about the only thing that can happen pretty much. Like all of the people in our lineups would have to all be hurt at the same time. Like that's the only time that we'll do worse than we did this week, because we came out basically at a net even. We really didn't, I wouldn't call it winning any money. I wouldn't call it losing any money. We came out at a net equal, really. And that's about as bad as you'll have it, is if you play the optimal people every week and you just don't do silly things.
Yeah. So let's talk about how we got there. How do we break even despite these terrible calls, and what do we get right, and why did we get it right? Well, the things that we got right for DFS was we bet big on the Packers-Falcons game. In particular, we bet big on the Packers. And the Falcons, of course, won the game and were better, but the Falcons' offense is less predictable in a lot of ways than the Packers' offense.
Yes, it is.
And the Falcons' defense is, in a lot of ways, predictable what will work against them. Right? We knew that they were going to struggle against receiving backs, and they did. Ty Montgomery went nuts, went bananas. And I think the quote from last week's stream is Mike said, "Ty Montgomery is my jam this week." Yep. And in fact, he was in our lineup in every one of our lineups, and he was basically the highest scorer, I think, or one of the highest scorers for the week.
Yeah, he was either the or like second or third.
So, so we got Montgomery right, but also I think we had one team where we just picked everyone on the Packers that we could afford.
I think we picked four. I think we picked 4 Packers players and Julio Jones. Pretty sure is what we had.
So we just went all in on that game. We knew it was going to be a high scoring game. It was a high scoring game. The only thing we missed was like Julio didn't get a touchdown, but he had almost 100 yards, I think. So he had a good game.
Yep.
So we, that getting that game right really helped us get back into breaking even this week despite our bad calls. In addition to that, the other game that we called as being the other game of the week was the Saints Patriots game. We went big on James White as our like cheapo guy who would return his value plus, and sure enough, he got 17 PPR points, and he was costing only $4,000 last week. So that was a huge return on our investment. And in a lot of ways, it was just too easy. That call at least.
Yeah, that call was one of those where even though he was like our cheap guy, we wound up replacing him in other places just because we didn't want to turn down the points that he was going to offer. Because when you get 4+X off of a guy, like and what we mean by 4X is like if you take his value at 4,000 and you multiply it, or you divide whatever he scored divided by his value, you should get that amount of returns, right? So, he scored 17 points. That means he scored over 4 times what his salary value was, and it was easy. Like you don't want to pass up those points when you have a guy that's so cheap, and so he just fit in the lineup almost everywhere. We had him in most places, and it was a really good game to target. We also targeted Gronk a bit in that game. I don't know if we targeted Breeze anywhere, but he was fine, and obviously Brady was a really good target.
We didn't have Breeze because Brady was the same price and better.
Exactly, yeah. So we targeted Brady in a few places, and that was extremely productive. You got to figure out these games for the week, and you have to try and target those games. Some of these games are going to be, I don't know about stinkers, like they may be good football games from a real football perspective, but they may not produce fantasy players, and that's what we're looking for, right? We're trying to exploit what fantasy players will actually be the ones to blow up this week, and there are things that lend us to that, and these are the kind of things that we're trying to help you guys out with.
And the things you look for in the games of the week is you need 2 good offenses and 2 bad defenses. That's the ideal, right? Because the offenses need to be pushing each other to keep scoring. You don't want one to get ahead and just like run the clock out. And so while the Saints didn't necessarily keep the Patriots to keep scoring, the Patriots were kind of afraid of the Saints in some sense because the Saints can score quickly.
Right.
And so that, I think, in a lot of ways, propelled them to keep scoring.
Yep.
Next one was some of the ones we were right about who would be bad. We were right about Odell Beckham being, pretty much a decoy. This is what happens when players are playing at 50% and he even said earlier this week it's this 8 to 10 week injury or 6 to 8 week injury, and this is week 4. So what do you think was going to happen?
Right.
So like 4 days before the game, he's not going to play all the snaps, and he's not going to be himself even if he did try to play all the snaps. But he only played like a third of the snaps,
he played 30 snaps even, or 34, I think. And so it was like half-ish, but I mean, we told y'all like he was going to play a decoy for most of the plays. Like Odell almost never plays less than like 90% of his offensive snaps. Like you can't rely on a guy who doesn't want the health help, right? Like he doesn't want any sort of like helping mechanism. So you got to be careful with somebody like that. And you're right, Joe. He did come out and say specifically like this is a fairly long injury. He's going to try and battle through it, but it's still early. You need to be careful with him. The other thing I was going to say is like, I think you were telling me this earlier. You were telling me a guy in your league swapped out Golden Tate at the last minute for Odell Beckham Jr. to put him in your lineup. Like, I could not have painted a more perfect scenario for me to tell you guys like how wrong that person is, right? That person's probably sitting there thinking like, got him, dude. Yes. Ha. Odell Beckham scored 1 point, however many points more than Golden Tate. Knew it. Did the right idea. Like, manager of the year award over here. And it's like, no, you could not be more wrong. Golden Tate is the right play 100% of the time. If you went back in time and you did all the algorithms and calculations of whatever you wanted to do and put on your lucky underwear and decided your gut feeling, like that's not the right answer. You did the wrong thing. You should have played Golden Tate 100 out of 100 times. The guy who gets 10 targets a week and is the featured target and an offense that throws all over the red zone, all over the field, even against a bad matchup versus the guy who's hurt on a crap offense with a guy who's terrible at calling plays and no run offense. Like, that's terrible. You got to be kidding me. Please don't do that. Like, don't fall for this stuff. That's what we're trying to tell you guys. When we tell you he's going to be a decoy and he's not going to play and be productive, like, it's for good reason. We're not trying to just sabotage your fantasy team. You got to listen to these things.
So the other thing that I want to make a point about this is like people get into this fallacy of like, oh, I drafted him in the first round, like I have to play him. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you don't. Like, if you want to win, then you don't have to play him.
Right.
Like if Odell is healthy, then you should play him just about every week. There's almost no reason not to play him, but he's not. He was going to be a decoy. We knew that. You know, we told you that. But if you listen to him talking during the week in his press conferences, basically he told you that too.
Yep.
And before the game, McAdoo said something like, you know, I'll use him sparingly when I need him and stuff like that. What does that mean? That means he's not going to play that many snaps. He's going to be a decoy.
Yep. You have to pay attention. Like Joe and I are all about start your studs. Like we really sign up to that belief. It's very important. We don't just play matchups because matchups. Like we don't do that. But you have to listen to what people are telling you. And health is one of the few things that you just can't overcome. Like if it's not there and you can't produce, these guys are all elite athletes. They're gonna put you down if you're not at 100%.
So real quick, let's get through the last couple that we think we were right on. We said Martavis Bryant would have a good game. This would be a game where he would basically get deep because of all the attention that the Vikings would give Antonio Brown. Plus, it was a home Steelers game, which means that Ben Roethlisberger is allowed to show up. And that's what happened, right? I mean, Martavis had two long catches, including a touchdown, and he had another long play where he got defensive pass interference. That would have been another 40 yards for him, but he still ended up with a solid day. I think it was something like 19 PPR points, which is pretty good for what he was going for, like 5,500 or something like that.
Yeah, he was 5,500 last week, and he went up against Trey Waynes. Like it's just Trey Waynes is just getting abused as of right now. Yeah,
well, especially since Xavier Rhodes is so good. I mean, he locked down Antonio Brown,
yep.
Which is one of the only people who could do that.
Yep.
Thursday night football game was terrible. They will almost certainly continue to be terrible. Even if the game itself is good, which it's unlikely that it will be, it will probably also be low scoring. And if people do score, it'll be random people, not people that you want to score. So, you know, while we might be wrong about one or two players over the course of the season here, in general, avoid Thursday night games on average. That will be the right thing to do.
Right. Alex Erickson was like the top scoring player from that game or some shit. Like he was like second or third. Like they're bad games, guys. Like I don't care if you want to watch them as a fan, like that's fine, but play defenses from those games. Like don't play anyone else. They're really bad games.
That's right. Playing defenses isn't a bad idea. But anybody else, it's just too risky. I try to avoid it if at all possible.
Yeah.
And the last thing, this is less for DFS and much more for season-long leagues, is we told you last week. I know Mike wants to talk about this, so I'll let him go. But we told you last week to pick up Chris Carson.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna be like pretty harsh on people for this week, and this is probably one of the only times I'm gonna do this. But you guys, like, you have to understand. So we told y'all like last week about adding people a week ahead of the firestorm, right? We sat here and Joe and I talked over it, and we looked at when David Johnson got hurt, and we told you guys, we really don't think it's going to be Kerwin Williams. Oh, we really don't think it's going to be, Andre Ellington. And we told you the reasoning behind that. And then we told you, hey, you're probably going to see a Chris Johnson signing. And then what? Not within 48 hours, who was signed? Chris Johnson, right? We told you earlier in the season, I was like, hey, by week 4, Chris Carson is probably going to be the guy. Then week 1, I was like, hey, by week 2, this guy's probably going to be the guy. We told y'all people to pick up, and I'm telling you, I see the numbers. Like, I look at it, and I see who's being added and who's not being added and how many people are available in certain leagues. And I see people picking up people like Kerwin Williams, Benny Fowler, Andre Ellington, Alan Hearns, like these backup ass clowns. And we told y'all to add Chris Carson, Chris Johnson. We're trying to give you guys the heads up to be ahead on these players. And if you don't have them this week, you lost. It's your fault. You did it to yourself. So don't cry when you put in a big bid for the guy this week after he had a week and blew up. Like don't come crying to us now. You already lost. We're on to the next week of people who should be able to pick up this week that you should not have already had last week. That's all I'm going to say about the waiver wire.
Yeah. So on to the waiver wire for this week. That led us right in perfectly. So who you got this week?
I think, the obvious ad has to be Rashard Higgins, right? Like he got 11 targets, mostly coming regardless of how the game flow went for Coleman being in or out the game, and also with Kaiser being in the game, he got most of his targets while Kaiser was in. I think 8 of his 11 came while Kaiser was in the game. That's a big deal, right? So we want to see how game flow is going to be for when the typical offense runs. And this guy isn't a scrub either. If I'm not mistaken, in college he had like a 15 or 1700 yard season or something like that. Like he's not.
He like holds some college records. He was really fantastic at Colorado State, I think.
Yeah, Colorado State. That's it. And so what I'm saying is like, and Joe knows this. Like I'm not saying that like rookies or that like college necessarily surefire like translates to what's going to happen in the NFL. A lot of times it may not, but like you can tell when a guy is talented, right? And so if I put the ball in his hands and I say, hey, go run that way, like I know that the guy can do that. Like he's pretty electric with the ball in his hands. He obviously made some he made some really good catches in this game. Like really to get 11 targets from Deshaun Kaiser, and I think he caught 10 of them. Like to do that, you got to be pretty good. Like Deshaun is struggling to throw the ball down the field. Like if that guy is going up and getting the ball, like I want part of that. And if he's going to get the volume, I'm about it. So, and I just can't think of anybody else that's on the waiver wire at this point in the season, especially with Coleman going down, that fits into the role the same exact way that the guy before him does, and is also going to get some amount of volume that mixes in with that, capability and opportunity kind of gumbo, to mix it in with. And I think he's the best ad, not probably all season, but like he's top 5 all season, that you may see this season, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier about how, I've been saying this for a while this season. I thought that Corey Coleman could do what Terrell Pryor did last year, or maybe even a little bit better this year. Obviously, that's not going to happen now with him being out for the next 8 weeks. But that, like, we know that this offense has the ability to support somebody like that, and Corey Coleman was in a lot of ways on his way to doing that.
Right.
And I don't think that Rashard Higgins is as good of a player as Corey Coleman.
I don't either, but I think that he's probably not terribly
He's a good enough player. He's a good enough player to pick up, and with a high target share and everything. He's already listed as the starter along with Kenny Britt. Kenny Britt has shown through 2 games that he's not going to get open, and when he does, he's going to drop the ball. So, Rashard Higgins is going to be seems like he's going to be the guy for this Browns offense, which, while it's not a fantastic offense, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot in the second half of games, and that's when this guy can get his points. So I think Rashard Higgins is a really good pickup this week. Yeah,
I'm going to piggyback off of that because you led me into it pretty perfectly. There's just one other guy that I want to talk about because he's obviously not owned in a lot of leagues, and I'm not sure why he's not at least rostered. But when Joe was talking about bad offenses, like, bad offenses can sometimes produce a player or two that you want to try and pick up, and Jermaine Kearse is one of those people who's like not owned in like 2/3 or more of fantasy leagues. That should not be, guys. Like I'm not saying that he's really good. I'm not saying go out and start him over your good people or anything, but like Jermaine Kearse should be rostered. If he's not, and unless you have really good reason not to roster him over people on your team, like get those weak ass bench players out of here that you're hoping is something random is going to happen and they're going to blow up because they went to your like alma mater or something. Quit that. Get Jermaine Kearse, roster him. Like stop being dumb about fantasy and emotional. Like get the right people on your roster. So
yeah, I mean Josh McCown's good enough to support a receiver
for sure.
He's not going to get 1,500 yards, not going to blow up, but he's going to be a solid bye-week flex.
Right.
And those are the guys who help you make the playoffs because you have to play bye-week flexes 4 or 5 games a year.
Yep.
So and it turns out that Jermaine, like we thought it was going to be Robbie Anderson at the beginning of the season. They traded for Jermaine Kearse right
and
before the season
he's
started.
Better.
Like
he's just a better player. Yeah, he's just a better player. So there's no harm in him. Let's see. I would say the next probably best person I would add. It's a tie for me, Joe. It's probably between a tight end and a wide receiver. The tight end to me is really obvious this week. The wide receiver is obviously lagging behind Rashard Higgins, and so my wide receiver is J.J. Nelson, and it's pretty hinging on whether John Brown misses a lot of time or not. Not because I think John Brown is a better player, but because I think they're just confused in how they want to use both of them on the field at the same time. So if John Brown misses a lot of time, I think J.J. Nelson stands to get the most upside out of this, and J.J. Nelson is more talented than John Brown as far as running routes goes, and I think he gives Carson Palmer a more intermediate place to throw because I just think he's better throwing in that portion of the field. So, I would say J.J. Nelson is probably my second, just because wide receivers are more are just more sought after than tight ends. But Ben Watson is a close third for me. And
yeah, it depends what you need, right? If your team needs a tight end, Ben Watson is the guy this week. He's probably the best tight end that will happen on the waiver wire this year.
He is.
Almost certainly.
He
so
is.
if you screwed up and didn't get a tight end, or you got a tight end and it turns out he's not great, or you're worried about Gronk missing this week because he's somewhat unlikely to play with his groin. Even if he does play, he might be a decoy, so he's a guy to watch out for.
Right.
This week. Ben Watson is the guy. Like, Joe Flacco historically loves his tight end. The Ravens use their tight ends a lot. They use all of them a lot, but Ben Watson's in on almost every play. And Flacco likes to check down to him. They design plays for the tight end. And, historically, if you just look through the tight ends in this offense, the best tight end in the Ravens offense was Pitta for a long time. In PPR leagues especially, they're really good.
Just insane target share. Like, just huge. I think
over 10 targets a game.
Pitta led the league in targets almost every year that he was healthy. Like, other than
for tight ends,
for tight ends. Sorry, for tight ends. Like, that's insanity. They just love to throw to him so much, and I think maybe Flacco forgot in the first week, or maybe Ben was still recovering a little bit, and they really wanted to hand the ball off. I mean, they ran the ball a lot the first week. They ran the ball over 2/3 of the amount of time that they were in. That they were in. So, Ben Watson is as good as it's going to get on the tight end waiver wire this week, or this year. Sorry.
Yeah, and the other tight end, if you really need a tight end for this week in particular, like, for example, if you have Gronk, he's not going to play, and you're worried, or you had Greg Olsen, he's not going to play, and you're like, how do I get through this week or the next couple of weeks? And the guy you can get is Ed Dickson.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think he's going to be great. I'm really worried about Cam Newton. Cam has looked terrible through 2 games, really missing wide open receivers all over the place. He's not looked good. That being said, he does like his tight end. Ed Dickson has shown that he's a competent tight end. He's not nearly as good as Greg Olsen, but he's a competent tight end. He's a tier below Ben Watson as far as I'm concerned, both in the short term and in the long term. But Ed Dickson's a guy that if you need a tight end, you can spend a very minimal amount of money for a pickup for free and get by for a few weeks if you have to.
Yeah, that's a great point. Pairing him with the Gronk owner, maybe that's worried about a 1-week injury. That's a pretty good point. So going along with the bad ads from last week, we're trying to keep you guys away from doing silly things. So we're gonna do that again. I'm gonna single out people that when I get on stream and tell you next week that you're an idiot for picking up, you'll have a reference to go back and look at and be like, oh, he did call me an idiot before I even did it. And then we're gonna move on to our DFS picks for this week. Do not pick up Samaje Perine and do not pick up Orleans Darkwa. Okay, if you need more expounding on why we don't want you to do that, you can go back and watch previous streams, or you can sum it up as one's bad and the other is a Giants running back. That's about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say there. Don't get Giants running backs. Don't get backup running backs on teams that can't run the ball, which is the case for both of these guys. Another one is a guy who's been being picked up a lot because he had a huge game last week. He's a good player. He should be rostered. You shouldn't spend a lot of money on him. Is Chris Thompson.
Yeah.
So he should definitely be rostered in any kind of PPR or 12 team league. He's a good player, and the offense really likes him, but he doesn't get almost any carries. He had 3 carries for 77 yards last week. His first carry was the one that went really far, and they only gave him 2 more. This is after their starting running back Rob Kelly went down. He's just not going to get a lot of carries. He's not going to get he gets targets. He's a 3rd down guy, so if they get behind, he's going to have a good game probably.
Yeah, to add to what you're saying, or rather to clarify, not what Joe's saying is not don't have this guy in the league. Don't add him at all. Yeah. What we're saying is this falls into the previous people before. You should have drafted him already, or he should have been on your roster already. You can't blow your load to add this guy because people are blowing their load. Don't spend any
money or blow a high waiver pick or something like that to get him.
Yeah,
if he's free as a free agent, you can pick him up if you think he'll help your team.
Right, that's exactly right. Cool.
But he's a back of the roster guy. You shouldn't be starting every week unless you're in a massive league. He's a matchup flex play. If you think the Redskins are going to get blown out or lose, then you can play him because they'll be throwing a lot.
Yeah, I have to give you guys for instance, I have a 20-team PPR league that I'm in, and I think that Chris Thompson is a flex for me in that league. Like that's how low he should be. That's how much lower he should be for you guys. Like he shouldn't really see the bench until you're getting into the like hairy parts of bye weeks, and you need him as a flex play, or you need like your depth at running back just happens to not be great, and your wide receiver depth is really good, and you can put him in a running back spot and he can get you through. Like we're not saying don't add the guy, but he should probably already be on rosters, and if he's not, just don't blow 50% of your fab budget on him because he had a 25-point week.
Ceiling's just not that high.
Right.
The other guy that's being picked up a lot this week, and I get it, but don't do it, or don't. Again, you can pick him up for a short-term thing. Is Trevor Siemian?
Oh, yeah.
Look, he's got 6 touchdowns in 2 games. That's fantastic. Great for him. They've been 2 home games. The 4 touchdown game was against Dallas's practice squad, basically. I mean, the Cowboys lost all three or 4 of their top cornerbacks in the first half of that game. And so all Simeon did was just throw it to wide open Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, who are 2 phenomenal receivers, and let them score touchdowns. So good for him for doing that. It's great for the Broncos offense. It means that those receivers are going to continue to be useful, and CJ Anderson will be more useful than we thought he might be this year. So that's great from a fantasy perspective. Trevor Simeon's not going to continue to throw 4 touchdowns a game. He hasn't played on the road yet. He hasn't played a really good defense yet. So let's just pump the brakes on that. You can use him as a bye week fill-in. As a streamer, as a matchup play guy. Don't spend a bunch of your money if you ended up picking Cam Newton or some other quarterback who's struggling. Don't spend a bunch of your money on Trevor Siemian and expect him to save your season. He's not going to do it.
Yeah. All right, Joe. We're gonna go through this one pretty quick. The stream's probably only gonna be for about another 10 minutes or so, somewhere right around there. If we have any questions, we'll try and answer them at the end. But we'll probably take most of our questions on Twitter this week and on Discord and stuff like that. I'll link that stuff down in there for you guys in the description. But we want to do a quick DFS run through this week for guys that we're willing to pay up for, guys that we're willing to that we think are value plays, and then guys that we're scraping the bottom of the bucket with that we're willing to kind of punt with almost, right? So for this week, we're gonna do for each section, we're gonna do each position. We're gonna give you one person from each position that should try and help you round out your lineups. If you're trying to figure out who is the really, really good guy, if I'm trying to pay up in any one particular position, we'll help you with that. And if you really just can't figure out who you think is the last guy that you should maybe pick that can maybe return value, we're gonna help you guys out with that too. So, Joe, tell me who you're playing in. Your luxury play. Who's your luxury play for quarterback?
Oh man, if I'm spending money on quarterback this week, it's going to be Derek Carr.
Okay.
He's playing against the Redskins. We talked about how we think Crabtree's going to have a big week because he's playing against Rashad Breeland. The Redskins' defense is really just not very good, and the Raiders have shown that they love to throw the ball. They like to throw it in the red zone. Derek Carr's my guy.
I like it. Who's your value play at quarterback this week?
Matt Stafford. He's $600 cheaper than Derek Carr. It's not huge, but he's playing against the Falcons. As you'll see in a minute, these 2 quarterbacks are not by an accident. These are my 2 games of the week: the Raiders, Redskins, and Falcons, Lions. Stafford's been good so far. They're going to have to score to keep up with the Falcons. The Lions are playing at home. All right. Great so far this season. He loves trust the Cooter.
Yeah, dude, trust the Cooter. I can't think of a better hashtag. You guys should get that trending on Twitter. Trust the Cooter. All right, who's your bargain bin quarterback this week?
My bargain bin quarterback is way down in the bargain bin. Jacoby Brissett playing against the Browns this week.
Oh, brisket.
Yeah, he's looked okay so far. He's getting acclimated with the offense. He runs a decent amount, so he's going to give you probably 20 or 30 yards of rushing at least. He's a reasonable chance of getting a rushing touchdown, and he's just super, super cheap. So while I'm not saying he's going to be amazing, he's got a good chance of returning value here if he throws a touchdown or 2.
What is he, 4K this week?
4,800.
4,800.
Which is, I think he's one of the cheaper quarterbacks, maybe the cheapest. That's that you should think about playing.
Dude, I mean, to get anybody under 5K, there's people that are backups that are priced over him. When you start getting into that territory, you know that person should return value almost no matter what. Now, quarterbacks have a higher threshold of returning value. You need more than 2x out of them, but still for them to be 4,800, for him to get 3 and 4x is still very possible with just a mediocre day, like 200 yards and a touchdown, maybe 30 rushing yards, like that returns you 3x right there. So that's good. That's the kind of stuff that you're looking for. That's a really good bargain bin. I'll admit I didn't go quite that low this week. I had Carr for my luxury play, but I'll change it up and I'll say Breeze because I also had him written in here too. Carolina's front seven is really good, but their secondary still doesn't scare me in any way whatsoever. Also, I don't have any faith in the New Orleans defense, but Cam really does look bad. And if for just some reason they wind up getting a wonky turnover, giving Drew Brees an extra opportunity will always make you pay. And I'll take any extra opportunities that you get. Plus, I think both of them match up to the point where this could wind up being a shootout. If it ends that way, and I'll take Breeze in the shootout anytime. Like, even if his team is going to get 40 dumped on him, they'll put up 32, 27 to 32, somewhere right around there, or they could pop up with 48, right? So anytime that there's a potential for a shootout, I like Breeze on my team. So I like him for my luxury play. My value play was also Stafford. I think it's too obvious this week. Like, I just... You made a good mention of it. It's like 600 difference. It doesn't seem like that much, but like 600 difference gets you some time from that mediocre tier receiver to like that really high end guy, right? Like it could be the difference for you, right? Like if you like Jay Ajayi over LaShawn McCoy this week, like that's a $700 difference. Like you're pretty close, right? It gives you the opportunity to massage these guys in ways that you see. We're bringing back the massage, and it's really important. You got to massage those teams. It allows you to massage your lineups in a way that you can sort of fit people in if you like overall one lineup over another. So saving that 600 can be really good. Plus, I honestly think that Stafford could just be like one of the top guy of the week. Like it's very possible that he could just wind up being the top producer for the week. So my bargain bin is Carson Wentz. I'm going to keep playing him until he proves me wrong, dude. Like, and I'm not afraid of the Giants at all in any way whatsoever, just from the sheer fact that they might run 70 plus plays because the Giants offense is garbage. So I'm just saying, like, their defense is good. They are talented. I like the Giants defense, but when you put somebody out there for 70 plus plays a game, I don't expect any defense to hold every single time for 70 plays. It's not possible. You can't do it. Like, it's physically not possible. So I'm going to keep Carson Wentz out there until he really proves me wrong. I think he's athletic enough to not just get dumpstered. I think his line is playing really well as well. And even though they don't, like, I actually, this is one of the few times where I view not having a run game as a positive because he just has to throw it every time. Like, he really does. He treats Ertz as his run game, basically. And if Torrey Smith would catch some balls, he would light people up for like 4 touchdowns a game. So I'm going to keep playing Wentz. I know he's not like super, cheap. He's 5,900. He's only 300 less than Stafford, but that's one of the places where it's like, I feel that's about as low as I feel going, unless I am going to go to somebody like a Brissett. And I don't love that pick this week. Like I think it's a really good bargain bin if you need to try and really go low. But I don't love that pick this week. So Carson Wentz is probably as low as I'm going to dip. So give me your luxury play at running back.
For running back this week, I'm going with Jay Ajayi. Mm-hmm. The Dolphins came out last week and just ran the heck out of the ball. They're playing the Jets this week. They're not going to, they're playing on the road. Smoke and Jay's, they're playing on the road for the second week. They're going to be afraid of Smoke and Jay turning over. They don't want to keep this game close. They just want to run it out. They played very conservative last week. I expect them to do the same thing this week as they work, Jay Cutler and these other guys back into the offense and start getting Jay Cutler acclimated. So I think they're just going to hand it off a lot. They're going to be winning the game, hand it off, win the game. Jay Ajayi is going to get a lot of touches.
Yeah, he had almost 30 carries last week. Like that's things that you have to pay attention to. And this is in an offense that we thought Smoke and Jay was just going to go absolutely banana sandwich in. And he looked fine to me. I don't think he looked bad.
Good. He looked a good game manager, which is weird.
Yeah,
for him.
It really was. And actually, Landry got a bunch of targets too, if I'm not mistaken. So it was really like, it was kind of strange. Like, we don't think Landry's a bad receiver. We just think that's not the kind of guy that Jay Cutler really is to try and throw to, right? Like, he's not a guy that hands the ball off 30 times and then throws to the, not check down receiver, but the slot guy like 15 times. It's unusual is all we're going to say, right? We can't say it's not going to happen, but it's unusual. So, you got to pay attention to Jay Ajayi getting almost 30 carries. Who's your value play?
I like Isaiah Crowell as value play. He's under $5,000. He's under $5,000, which is pretty cheap for a guy who's
great.
a standalone starting running back.
Right.
He's playing against the Colts. So he's struggled so far. Most of those struggles have come because they've been losing, and they've been playing some really good teams. The Browns have. They played the Steelers and the Ravens. That's a tough way to start with 2 division games like that when you're starting with a rookie quarterback and all this stuff. Now they get the Colts. The Colts are a bad team. They're not going to blow out the Browns. I'm not saying the Browns are going to win. They might not. The Colts aren't going to blow them out. They're going to be in the game. They're going to run the ball.
Yep, I agree. Who's your bargain bin running back?
If you can get volume at 3,800 against a bad defense, I'll take it.
Yeah, for sure.
Or 4,800 against a bad defense.
Yep. Who's your bargain bin?
I gave it away a little bit here. My bargain bin is Gio Bernard, who's at 3,800. He's basically as cheap as you can get for a guy who's going to get any snaps, and I think he's looked like their best running back so far. I don't think he's a great running back or anything like that. I don't think that he's an amazing play this week. But for this price, I mean, he's almost guaranteed 3 or 4 catches a game. That almost makes you up his 2x value there. I mean, just the catches, if he gets no yards, gets you 1x. So if he gets any yards or any carries, he's going to make up that 2x almost certainly.
Yeah, I mean, he doubled up the snap count of Mixon or Hill last week, and I think that after Ken Zampese's being firing, I don't think you're going to see any more Hill. Like, I really just don't. I think they actually, if you want the hot take, like, I think they may try and trade Hill because I just don't think that he really, like, they don't need all 3 of them. I think they may try and trade Hill to a team that really does need a running back because there are teams out there that do need him. So I agree. I think Bernard's look like the best running back as well. And 3,800 just gets to a point where it's like, dude, this is almost embarrassingly cheap. Like it's.
They're playing Green Bay. They're gonna lose. They're gonna need to throw the ball.
Yeah, he's gonna be in a ton. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's in 40 of the 60+ snaps this week. Like even a greater disparity between their. Between their snap counts. So for expensive this week, to me this is actually a Le'Veon Bell week. Like this is finally the week to pay up for Le'Veon Bell. He is really expensive though. So I'm giving you an alternative if you decide that you want to not pay up for the guy who hasn't done anything so far in the year and he's the most expensive running back. I'm going with LaShawn McCoy. Like I'm doubling down on the fact that we did not make the wrong decision in picking Zeke in a vacuum, right? Like you can run on the Broncos. I don't think it's a fantastic game because I think Tyrod is not great at throwing it, but he's looked decent this year. He'll still get some rushing yards, and they'll keep them on their toes enough for LaShawn to be in the game, and he also stays in the passing game if he ever needs to. If he gets a dump off, the dude can take it to the house like anytime. So he's a huge playmaker, and that's one of the ways to beat the Broncos defense. So I'm not afraid to play LaShawn at all this year. Or this week specifically. My value play is Isaiah Crowell as well. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's just the obvious pick. Like, he gets insane volume. He's going to get more volume this week. They won't get blown out. All the reasons Joe said, plus some more. My bargain bin running back this week. Since I already talked about LaShawn McCoy, I was going to mention Mike Tolbert here because he's 3,800, and he gets touchdowns, but he is a bit touchdown dependent. You and I talked about him a bit before the episode started. I'm going to go Darren Sproles here just because he gets so much playing time and he's clearly the best back there and they love to throw it. Like this is another thing. The game script goes in favor of Darren Sproles. Like LeGarrette Blount didn't get a single touch last week. I'm just, hey, newsflash everyone. It's because he sucks. We warned you before. This is another one. Like I don't really feel that bad for you. I'm not going to outright tell you to cut him right now, but I'm holding back demons that are telling me to tell you to cut him right now. Like I don't think he's going to finish the year on the team.
Yeah, I mean I said that before the season started.
I know you did. I'm just reiterating.
I still think that I don't think he finishes the season on the team.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah. Darren Sproles just gets so much playing time. I don't see him not. This is another Giovanni Bernard case, right? Like if he gets a couple of catches, he's athletic enough to make something happen. I don't want him to get 30 touches a game; he'll die. But I want him to get 10-ish plus touches a game, and I want him to be in the game. Those are things that he's getting as of right now, and in PPR leagues, he's going to return value. So I'm not afraid of playing him at all.
Not at all. I totally agree. The one guy I'm a little shakier on than you are is LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, I feel
and that. the reason is less about the Broncos' run defense, and it's solely this. I think the Broncos can play with 9 guys in the box and stop Tyrod, stop any of the receivers from getting open. Right? I don't think that Aqib Talib or Chris Harris need any safety help whatsoever to cover Buffalo's receivers.
No,
those guys are jokes. So I am a little worried about the Broncos putting 9 guys in the box and saying if you can get open, great, good luck. But we're not letting you run on us. I do think that LaShawn has a good chance of making some hay in the passing game, though.
Yeah, for sure. All right, who's your wide receiver that you're paying up for?
I'm paying up for Crabtree this week. We talked about it earlier. I went in on Carr. He's in my game of the week, so I think it's gonna be a high scoring game. Cooper's being shadowed by Josh Norman, but so there's not a whole lot more to say that we haven't talked about. Crabtree's the guy I'm paying up for.
I love it. I had a backup in case he picked mine again this time. I'm not like paying up that high this week. I don't love the guys at the top of the heap. I'm going Michael Thomas this week. This is the first week that I think he's actually going to have like a really stellar performance. I don't think that anybody eliminates him on this defense. I'm not scared of their secondary at all. They have some decent safety play, but that's not really where he makes his hay, right? He's not a deep guy. He's not gonna. He slants you to death, and he just
That's right.
He really does. He slants you to death, and he fights for extra yards, and when dude, it's like when he sees the end zone, he just finds a way to muscle it in there, and he's got great hands going over the middle. They have good linebackers. Their front seven is good, but I'm not terribly afraid of playing Michael Thomas in this game. So he's the wide receiver that I'm paying up for. Who's your value play?
The value play. This is of course depending on if he plays. It's Danny Amendola. In the one half of football that he's played so far this year, he had 100 yards and 10 catches, or 8 catches, something like that. I mean, he was phenomenal. The Patriots receiving core is struggling. Cooks hasn't done anything yet. He and Brady don't really seem to be on the same page. Hogan is just not as good version of Cooks. He's not that over the middle guy that the Patriots offense really needs to run. And Gronk may not play. If he does play, he's not going to be 100%. So who's Brady going to throw it to? It's going to be a lot of James White, who's expensive this week.
Yep.
And Danny Amendola, and so I think if Amendola is healthy, he's the guy.
I agree. Who's your bargain bin guy this week?
Bargain bin for me is Rashard Higgins. We talked about him earlier in the stream. He's only 4,000 this week. He's in a lot of ways he's the James White of last week, which I mean he won't be 4,000 again next week. He's going to get a lot of targets like James White did last week, and that in itself is going to return the value. Right. All he has to do is catch 4 passes of 40 yards and he gets 2x. He's almost guaranteed to do that because they're just going to funnel him the ball, is what it seems like looking at what happened last week.
Right, no doubt. My bargain bin wide receiver guy is Devontae Adams, $5,600. Like, it's a no-brainer. He and Ty Montgomery play so much of the Packers offense. Like, they're always on the field, and he runs a lot of routes. He's going to get the ball. Like, it just happens. Volume wins fantasy. It's $5,600. It's a no-brainer. My bargain bin guy was Rashard Higgins, but I'll go a different route here because I had some guys that I couldn't decide between cash game or GPP lineup, which way I wanted to go, so I'll talk about them both. But just really quick, Travis Benjamin is my cash game guy because the Chargers play with 3 receivers all the time, and it's always the same 3 guys. Like, he will get some looks, he will get some targets. He hasn't been great through the first couple of games. That's because his average depth of target is tough or is high, and they've played some tough defenses the first couple of weeks. That will rectify itself. Travis Benjamin will get some more looks. The other one is Torrey Smith, and this is for GPP plays specifically. I'm not telling you guys to go out and be all over Torrey Smith, but he's $3,600. Carson Wentz throws to him, and he just can't catch the ball. Like, if he catches, it's true though, right? Like, if he just accidentally bobbles it and is like, oh my God, I can catch this, and he takes it, like he'll take 2 balls to the house. He's had several throws that should have been touchdowns already, or at least 30+ yard pickups, and they go to him like pretty often. Like, I don't know what's wrong with them. They're pretty dumb, but they keep trying to get it to him. So he could be a really good GPP play one week. I just don't know which week it's gonna be. So
he's super cheap. Yeah, I totally agree with you about Torrey Smith. I've been waiting since the first week of the season to be like, when's the week to play this guy? Yeah, I watched him the first week, and it looked like he and Carson went for a little out of sync. Last week, Carson hit him in the hands 4 or 5 times on deep passes, and he dropped them all pretty much.
I know.
Maybe he caught one, but
it was incredible.
Like, he's going to accidentally catch one of these times, and it's going to be for a long touchdown.
Yep.
And they keep, like you said, chucking in the ball. So I like that play in general over the course of the season.
Yeah, like let me put it to you this way: Torrey Smith will be a part of $1 million lineup this year, right? Yeah. Like I can't tell you which week it'll be, but one week this year in $1 million lineup, you're gonna see Torrey Smith. Like, that's what you're gonna see. Okay, so I'm just telling you, like, he's gonna go huge one week. I just can't tell you which week it is. This week, it seems like it could be the week. Who are you paying up for tight end?
So I'm not crazy about paying up for any of the tight ends this week. The most expensive one is Gronk. I would absolutely not pay up for him.
Yeah, no way.
He's got this groin injury. We don't know how much he's going to play. He's limited in practice. Just stay away this week. You just don't need to do it. the guy that I'm gonna say is Travis Kelce. He's been phenomenal so far this season, and he's really the only, as far as I'm concerned, the only like very extremely talented tight end left standing at this point. I mean, Jimmy Graham, Jordan Reed, and Gronk are all limping around, and Delaney Walker's playing against the Seahawks. So by default, I'll pick Travis Kelce, but I'm not crazy about any of these guys for their value this week.
Yeah, so so I'm just making sure I'm clear. Like, you would rather not pay up for any of these guys than even if you had a luxury play, you'd rather go down and upgrade somewhere else, even if you're.
Yeah, go down a tight end and upgrade somewhere else. We'll talk about it later, but I think there's some good bargains for cheap prices at tight end.
Good deal. Who do you have on your value play for tight end?
I like Jack Doyle. He's 3,600, which is about what Zach Ertz was 2 weeks ago when we said that was totally nuts. And I think that Jack Doyle is going to get a similar number of targets. He's playing the Browns defense that allowed 2 touchdowns to Jesse James and then allowed Ben Watson to go nuts last week. So it's the team that so far hasn't covered a tight end once, as far as I could tell. And he had a ton of targets last week from Jacoby Brissett, so it seems like he's on the same page as him. Colts offensive coordinator Chudzinski loves to throw to the tight end. They design plays for him. Also, he's like, other than T.Y. Hilton, he's probably their best receiver. Certainly their most reliable one.
Definitely.
So I think Jack Doyle against a Browns team that hasn't shown they can defend a tight end is a really good value at 3,600.
Yeah, check down Chud is the way to go, dude. Who's your bargain bin tight end?
Bargain bin tight end, I'm going to say Jared Cook. I don't think that Jared Cook's a phenomenal player, but the Oakland offense is good. This is one of my games of the week. Like I said, I'm kind of all in on this one. And so far, Carr's looked his way, not necessarily in the red zone. I don't think he's a great chance to get red zone targets. Those are kind of reserved for Crabtree, it seems. But Cook's he's really cheap, 3,100. He's gotten some good targets, and the Redskins have looked terrible covering tight ends.
Yeah.
They let some rookie 4th round pick or something from the Rams get 100 yards on him last week.
Yeah.
So they're just blowing coverage all over the place at tight end. If they blow one to Jared Cook, Carr will find him and he'll catch it and get the yard. So I think Cook's got a good value there. Yeah. How do you feel about tight ends this week?
I will say, like, Sean McVay for the Rams really likes tight ends a bit more, and I don't know that Carr has been finding open people better this year though, so it could be a really good play. I don't know that I love that one, but it is a pretty good play. I'm paying up for Zach Ertz this week. That's the highest I'm willing to go, so I'm kind of in the same boat with you. Like, I don't really want to pay up for the top guys, but Zach Ertz he's great value still. He's $5K. And he'll return value. Like, he just gets so many passes and he gets a lot of yards, and he could score. Like, he's probably not going to, but he could, and that's just the icing on the cake sort of thing. So for my value play, Jack Doyle is mine as well. Check down Chud is just perfect for this. He got so many targets last week, and he's going to continue to get a lot of targets. People have to remember, Scott Tolzien played week 1. Jacoby Brissett is going to play moving forward, and he's going to play he's who played last week, so it should look more like last week than week 1. And my Goodwill store tight end this week is Ed Dickson, and we talked about him basically in the earlier on. He's really cheap on DraftKings this week. He's $2,700, and I mean, he's a good fill-in if you're trying to punt at tight end. $2,700 that's about as cheap as you can get. So, who's your defense that you're paying up for this week?
It's got to be the Broncos. I mean, I talked about it earlier. That's why I'm a little bit shy on LaShawn McCoy. I just don't see any way that the Bills can move the ball on them. I just think they're gonna basically do what they did last week and say, like, to Dallas and say, like, look, we're not gonna let you run on us. We're gonna threaten 8 or 9 guys in the box, and I just can't see Tyrod beating them in the air.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought about the Broncos and I tossed and turned about this one a little bit, but like, the Broncos, to me, I just don't want to pay up for any defenses this week. Like, I really don't want to pay. I could make an argument for the Dolphins, but I just think that them, even versus the Jets, is just too much. Like, 3,700 is just too much when there's better options lower down. So I'm just gonna pass on paying up for it. Like, I can tell you, I could sit here and lie to you and say that I like a defense to pay up for, but I won't pay up for any of them this week. So I'm just gonna pass on that one. Who's your value play for defense this week?
I think I know who you're going to say, so I'm going to say someone else. Okay. I'll say the Titans for value play on defense this week. They're playing at home against the Seattle offensive line that is atrocious. And the Titans have a fantastic defensive line.
Yeah.
So I just think, that's all. That's the explanation, right? I think they're going to sack Russell a lot, and I think the Seahawks are going to have a bad time.
Yeah, I think they may give up some rushing yards, but I think that there's a pretty good chance that they give Russell hell this week. Like, I think it's going to be really rough on him. Did you think I was going to say the Eagles?
I did.
Yeah, that's how. I mean, it's like it's almost the obvious play this week, right? Like the Giants are so trash on offense, like they're really really bad. McAdoo is just poo, and Eli. I'm not like sitting here criticizing him as much as everyone else. I don't think this is all Eli's fault. He's obviously some to blame for this too, but McAdoo is just such a crap play caller, and they're just so bad at running the ball.
Their offensive line is a disaster.
Yeah, their offensive line is really bad too. Like just everything on that offense, besides like Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard, is just pretty crap. Like, they're garbage. So the defense is just gonna ravage them. Like they're just gonna absolutely ravage them, and they're only 3K. Like I don't know what algorithms are thinking this week, but that's an obvious one to me.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, last week Eric Flowers made Ziggy Ansah look like Lawrence Taylor. And, I mean, like. Ziggy Ansah's good, but he's like he's not that good.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he shouldn't have sacked Eli. He shouldn't have been hitting Eli every play.
Yeah,
which is what was happening.
For sure. Like and
the Eagles' defensive line is better than the Lions' defensive line. It's going to be a nightmare for the Giants.
Oh, for sure. Their front seven is nasty. Like I really like the Philly defense this year, and just that they're playing the Giants is just like yum. Give me some. So who's your bottom of the barrel for the defense this week?
So I'm going to double down on the Bears here. They're playing at home this time, which is something I think I did overlook a little bit last time. If you're going to pick a defense, a cheap defense, you want to pick them at home if possible. They're playing against road men. So here's the logic here. The Bears defense was better than everyone thought last week, or better than the stat showed last week. So they dropped in price, basically. I think they did, or maybe stayed the same. They're pretty much the cheapest defense, but they're playing the Steelers on the road.
They're $100 less this week.
$100 less. They're playing the Steelers on the road where the Steelers traditionally struggle under Ben. So at least I'm willing to bet that the Steelers will not go off. They might have a good game, but they will not go off. They're not going to score like more than 30 points on the road. They just don't do it. And I think that road Ben has a good chance to not necessarily super implode, but throw a couple in, through maybe one touchdown or no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Have one of his stinker road games here. And I think the Bears defense are going to be a little upset about how many yards they gave up, how much criticism they're getting after last week when they really didn't play that bad.
I think that Ben will do some beneficial things for a defense. Let's put it that way. I think that's a fair thing to say. I really love the double down on the Bears pick. Guys, we're not like bear homers here. Like I'm not trying to tell you to pick them up and start them every week in your fantasy lineup or anything. We're doing things that make sense dollar-wise for maximum points, right? And when we look at the Bears, we're just trying to tell you they're better than the box score makes them out to be. Like we talked about earlier, we were wrong about them, but there's reason and context to why we were wrong. So I don't have I have a really good feeling about you doubling down on this call. I think that it's going to be a bit of a different. I think the Bears defense is going to be in a different category when we talk about them next week. Personally, mine is
let me be clear. I think the Eagles are I think they're worth the $800.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you for some reason feel that you need to spend the $800 elsewhere, the Bears aren't the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, 100%. My bottom of the barrel is the Raiders this week, and I'm sort of kind of I don't know if I'm as in on this game as you. My game of the week is a little bit different, but yours is my second game of the week. But I like the Raiders this week. I think Khalil Mack single-handedly could kill Josh McCown. Like he literally could dead after this week. But their secondary is a little bit worrisome, and those receivers aren't the worst receivers I've ever seen. So if they can contain the pass, I think you see a really good outing from the Raiders. You could see some turnovers and stuff. But if not, I think the Raiders could be a dangerous play. So just be careful with that one. That's why they're bottom of the barrel. So, Joe, what's your game of the week this week? These are games that we're targeting for fantasy, specifically basically the whole game. We want people all over this matchup. We think it's going to be a shootout. We think that there's going to be fantasy targets all over, and almost regardless of price, what game do you want to try and focus on?
I think my number one game as far as the highest scoring game is going to be, I think that it's going to be the Falcons-Lions. I also love the Raiders-Redskins. Those are my two. The Falcons-Lions is inside, as well. And the Falcons have just shown last week that when they play inside, they can be a part of these huge high-scoring games on both sides. And so that's great. I want to be a part of that game. And the Raiders-Redskins, I don't think either of those teams have spectacular defenses. I think the Redskins have a terrible defense, and the Raiders have a good offense. So I like both of those games. Nice. What's your game of the week?
Those were my two games of the week as well. I actually thought that Raiders-Redskins was going to be your top game of the week, and I had Falcons-Lions as my top game of the week. So we're actually exactly the same. What's new?
In agreement here. It's the outside factor, really. I mean, just the FedEx Field sucks.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's like FedEx Field and Soldier Field, like whatever you think your team is going to do, just downgrade it like a few points that week because the field just sucks.
Yeah, I definitely think that these are the two obvious games, though, right? Like, these games are 1A and 1B, right? I don't think one is clearly, like, these are the games to target. Joe, what about games that you're staying away from? Because I have two games.
Oh, man.
I have one game definitely that I'm staying away from, and then a recommendation to everybody else on another game that I probably want them to stay away from, too.
Unless DeMarco Murray is out, in which case I want to play Derrick Henry. I don't want to touch the Seahawks-Titans game.
Yeah, that's my game for no-go.
I mean, the Seahawks offense has looked terrible so far. They're playing a team with a good defensive line in the Titans. The Titans offense has looked pretty good so far, but last week they scored with a bunch of no names. Corey Davis is already out. He's not playing. They already said he's out this week. So, I'm not crazy about the Titans this week at all. The Seahawks defense is really good. So I'm avoiding this game at all costs.
Yeah, I'll say this as a small caveat, and then we're about to get up out of here. If this were later in the season, because the Titans are so trash in their secondary, I would consider playing Doug Baldwin. But the Seahawks are still slow starters, and I think that I think this is just gonna be a slugfest. Like, I think this is gonna be an ugly run the ball a lot, and like somebody wins 6-3. Like, it could be a very, very low scoring game. We just don't want it for fantasy. It may be a really good game. Like, I want to see this game.
That's right. It's a good football game.
Yeah, it's a good football game. Just because we're straying away from things fantasy wise doesn't make something bad at football. Like, it's going to be better than any Thursday night game we've seen in the last 10 years, guaranteed. Like, I want to watch the football game, but it's not going to be productive for fantasy purposes. The other one that I'm considering is Ravens Jaguars for two reasons. Number one, I think both of these teams are more focused on playing defense and running the football. Another thing that we just don't want for fantasy as much. And also, it's a London game, and London games are typically just less productive for fantasy purposes. So if you can do it, if your site allows you, I know DraftKings does, because we're playing the Sunday evening and afternoon, or the afternoon and evening slate. If you can choose a slate that allows you to avoid the London games, but if you are going to play it, I would say really the only person that I'd be willing to play from that slate of games is like Ben Watson, maybe Buck Allen if he's cheap. I don't know how much he is, but if he's cheap, I'd play Buck Allen.
Yeah, those are the only two I'd consider, and even then, like, especially if Terrence West is playing, Buck Allen's touches are going to be
right.
They've been high so far, but they're going to be split. It's just in DFS, I don't like playing guys with split carries unless I have to.
Yeah, no doubt. I think those are the two games to avoid this week. So anyway, that's going to be all for us this week, guys. If you have questions, once again, I want to recap. I didn't mean to be harsh on anyone as far as your waiver pickups and stuff like that, but there's almost no excuse for you not to. Yeah, that's true. I really did. But the reasoning behind that is because there's no excuse for you not to have the answer to these questions, right? We're always available. We're available in the Discord. You can comment on our videos. You can get in touch with us. If you want my email, I'll give you my email. Don't make a bad decision. Like, don't send somebody an awful trade request before you pass it by us. Get these questions answered. We have a community of people that is active, and we always want to talk to you guys. So if you have a question, get it to us, okay? There's no excuse for you not to have the question. Like, Joe, I would say between me staying up late and you getting up fairly early, like, we're probably available in the Discord 18 hours of most days. Is that fair?
Probably true.
Like,
yeah, it's probably true.
Like that's probably true. And if we aren't, like, one of our mods will let us know. Like, somebody will get in touch with us that knows us on perhaps a more personal level, and like they'll let us know. We want to cater to you guys. We want to do this right for you guys. So I'm being harsh because these are things that can really make or break your fantasy season, and that's the reason that we want to harp on these things so specifically. So but that's probably the only time I'll be that harsh for this entire season. So make the right decisions. Just go back, watch the other streams if you didn't know who we talked about before, and don't be shy. Don't be afraid to ask us questions. Get to us. You can follow us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/fantasyelite. We're on Twitter @fantasyelitefb. Obviously, you're on our live stream channel right now. I'll link the YouTube channel and also our Patreon account and our Discord into the description, and that helps you guys find us at pretty much any time. But until next week, about 167 hours until you see us next time, we'll catch you guys later. Peace.
Stay classy.